Hello and welcome everyone to our sixth Space for Change. I can't believe it's our sixth one. It's incredible. So anyone that is new, welcome, welcome, welcome. We have the Space for Change webinars every single month, and we warmly welcome you today. I can see some really familiar faces. So let's get to know each other just a little bit, and let me know who you are in the chat. Let me know where you are dialing in from. Usually we've got people from all around the world joining, and we've got a big community. So pop in the chat where you're dialing in from. Obviously, I'm dialing in from actually Delaware in the US at the moment. Andrew is from Sydney. Hi, Michelle from Auckland. How are you going? Zetland from the dog park. Love it. North Carolina. We have a very, very diverse group. Welcome, everyone. Hi, Sabrina. Nice to see you. I'm so glad you can make it. Charlie, I see you there as well. Welcome to today's Space for Change, everyone. Cape Cod, Massachusetts. Yes, go Lobsters. I'm Christina Herrera. For those of you who don't know me, I have a change enablement and workplace strategy consulting firm, Christina Herrera Consulting, and I am a coach as well. But most importantly is I am a vision partner with Earth to Mars and the brilliant team at Earth to Mars with Andrew and Hugo. And it's my pleasure today to introduce the Neuroscience of Change, a really exciting and a really timely topic, who's going to be presented by Claire Edwards. Now, before we get started, I wanted to let you know to stay on until the end. We do have a special competition that we are launching that is being sponsored by Talenza. So that's really, really exciting. Stay on to the end to make sure you're able to enter that competition and to learn more about how you can get connected with us and get in the loop with our future Space to Change. So welcome everyone. I can still see you coming in to the Neuroscience of Change with Claire Edwards. I'm going to hand over to Andrew.
Hey, good morning, everybody, wherever in the universe you are, and so wonderful to see all of you. For those of you who do know me, I have been on a mission for some time to bring humanity back into business practices. We're all humans. There's robotics, AI, automation happening all around us, which is all exciting in itself. But really, one thing robots and AI can't do is maximize the human potential. And this is why I'm so excited to have Claire Edwards with us on board from BrainSpot, because there's nothing more human and that unlocks the human potential than our own minds. So getting that understanding is so, so critical. But before we kick in, question for the group. So a little bit of a fun fact here. Which animal species do you think is genetically closest to us? So jump in the chat. Let me know what you think. And we got someone from Ireland. Welcome. So if we had to map out our genes, so we've got monkey. If we had to map out our genes, human genes versus another animal, which one do you think is the closest? Which says monkey. A marmoset. June says a chimpanzee, an octopus. I wish. Hey, I'd love to have tentacles to do all the stuff that, to multitask. So, June, you said chimpanzee. You are 100% right. Thank you for that. Wow, we've even had dolphin. I love that. But this is the interesting thing, is a chimpanzee has 98.6% similarity to our own chromosomes and our own genetic makeup. But I don't see chimpanzees taking over the planet, sending rocket ships to Mars, building clever systems and rolling out change programs and, tackling pandemics and all these things. So what is the difference that actually makes the difference between us and our beautiful chimpanzee friends? And really what that 1.4% difference did is it created a little mutation in our brains. And it was actually two centers, if we want to get really technical and accurate. I've got Claire here, so I've got to get this right. In the Broca and the Wernicke's area, they're two areas. And guess what? Had a bit of alien interference there. So those two centers are primarily responsible for language, which is a technology in itself. And what that did to separate us, so we don't have Planet of the Apes right now, is it allowed us to communicate with each other. And in communicating with each other, we can then collaborate and work together and hunt together, do projects together, build technology together, do these amazing things. And if we collaborate together, we unlock creativity. No matter what life throws at us, no matter what challenges happen, no matter what the market does, we can get creative and find other ways to connect, to roll out change, to lead people, to solve business problems. And really, when we start creating, we start getting a sense of a community, a sense of a group. And the more we empower communities, and we're seeing this in this day of social media, the more we can empower communities, the more we can unlock creativity, the better business results and the better the leadership programs we've seen in our experience. And this is why at Earth to Mars, we primarily use things like human-centered design, inclusive and collaborative technology, and most importantly, tapping into the brain or the hive brain of every client that we work with. So this is because, you know, we all have brains and we want to create a full brain experience with people we lead through change or people we take through our courses or coach. And the way to go about this is inclusive, collaborative, and participative in every single way. So why don't we do that? Instead of me telling you about all this, how about we tap into the brains of this group right now? So I'm pretty sure most of us after the pandemic know how to scan a QR code. I'm really, really hoping. So all you have to do is open your camera, scan that QR code. If you're not a bit of a scanner or you've got a different kind of phone, you can also go on the browser on your phone, preferably Chrome, and go to ahaslides.com/neuronut. I made that up myself. Okay, so there's the scan again. If you were busy scanning, I'll present that. It looks like we've got 30 people in the room already. Look at these amazing scanners. And let's check this out. What would you rate your neuroscience knowledge currently? So we've got quite a lot of newbies, which is fantastic. So 40%. We've got a few self-confessed neuro nerds here. And I think Claire's one of them. There's 33% that know quite a bit, and we integrate it. I sit into that category. So whilst I'm not a complete, neuroscientist, definitely everything we do with human-centered design and change and behavioral science certainly falls into that space. And we have some people who get behind the basics. So really nice spread today that we can actually learn from each other and ask some really, really good questions. Next question, and remember to push next slide. Why is neuroscience of change a relevant topic for you and the work that you're doing in your role? Charlie, all you have to do is go to your browser and go to ahaslides.com/neuronut. All right, so this is about connection. It's a very interesting topic, I have to agree. We're looking for a breakthrough here because I'm assuming all the old ways are not working. All the linear approaches to leadership and change are just not breaking through. They're creating more resistance. We want to understand people and we want to incorporate that into human-centered design. So glad you're interested in that. That's one of my many passions. Create new connections. Adopt these practices into what we do and help people adopt any change that we lead. Wow, look at all of this. We're all wired the same. Absolutely. We might have different connections, but our wiring and the building blocks are there. We want to be able to coach people, put this in training, in change. Wow, this is incredible. Thank you, folks. So what I'm going to do with this is I'm happy to share this. Don't forget to push submit, and I'm happy to share this in the LinkedIn group so that we've got everybody's opinion. But finish up. Wow, there's a lot there. More than lip service. Thank you. I think we're all getting into a time where technology just exposes the BS or the belief systems or the bullshit. So certainly good. And we all want to get some buy-in and sort of do shorter, sharper things with a lower level of attention. And my last question, if we can go to the next slide, is who is neuroscience most relevant for in this world of change and transformation, wherever you work, whether you're a PM, whether you're a leader? Oh my God, I'm so glad we're in agreement here. So we've had about 18, 19, 20, everyone is saying everybody. And I'm so glad we're all aligned on that. Obviously, some change managers, that is becoming more and more important. As technology comes into our world more and more, we've really got to get more into the human side and into the human skills. Awesome. So thank you for that, everyone. We've had 35 responses there. And thank you for your inputs. I will now go back to this. And it gives me great pleasure to now introduce our speaker, Claire. Claire is one of my favorite human beings. Hugo and I saw Claire a few years ago present at a recruitment event, and we were blown away. She was one of the most engaging people. I just loved how her knowledge just helped me understand how I can apply that to what we do in change and leadership and coaching. And we started chatting a lot. And then this year, Claire joined one of our foundation courses. And that's when I realized, oh my God, having Claire in that room, the alignment between what we do with human-centered design, change, training, all that kind of juicy stuff in the human sector of change is so aligned with the work that Claire's been doing in the neuroscience space. So we're partnering more and more with BrainSmart. We're seeing this as such a complementary space in change, alongside with technology and HCD and all the amazing things popping up. So Claire, I'm going to hand over to you. Please feel free to introduce your beautiful self. And I'm so excited for the juicy content you've got prepared for us today.
Fabulous. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you. And welcome everybody from all four corners of the globe, even though the globe isn't flat. Yes, so a little bit about just speaking to the introduction there is that I spent quite a few years in the world of IT. And I was a customer support manager for a large enterprise software planning company. And I was responsible for looking after clients pretty much the day after go live. The salespeople sort of didn't want to know anymore. And boy, what an experience that was. I'd often be mopping up basically blood, sweat and tears of my customers. And what I noticed was the difference that made a difference was the projects that were successful, were the ones that were human-centered, were the ones where they were putting people first. And the other ones where the focus had been on the process and the performance and the implementation. People were hurting. I mean, really hurting. They were suffering. And that's why I'm on a mission on the space bun to unpain change, because I'm sure you'd agree that so many people go through unnecessary pain when they're going through change, and just with a little bit of insight into what's happening between their ears, it doesn't have to be that way. So let me crack on and see how our technology is going to work. I had a little bit of, somebody mentioned hijack in there, a little bit of hijack before when I got thrown out the meeting, but I've popped back in. So let's see if this magic is going to work. And Andrew, you might want to put your volume on just to make sure that we have the right slides. Fabulous. Excellent. Okay, wonderful. We are on countdown and we're ready to go. Okay, so come on and work. Fabulous. Many of you, most of you, if you're working in the space for change, then you're going to be familiar with this quote. But I want to sort of pick it to bits a little bit, in that, just think about this. 18 months ago, the word social distancing didn't exist in our vocabulary. If we thought 18 months ago that we would be walking around wearing masks, never forgetting our mobiles because we needed the QR codes to check in, greeting people with an elbow bump rather than a handshake, you'd think we were absolutely mad. So when it comes to adapting to change, and in a year of the Olympics, boy, I think we all deserve a gold medal, don't you? We've adapted really quickly. We've adopted new habits. We've adopted new habits super quickly. Yes, we've adapted to change. But there's something I want to pick out here on this slide that really sort of brings it to light. We've survived. And we've survived and we've adapted to change at a bit of a cost. We've adapted under compliance. We've adapted under fear. And I think for many of us now, and particularly those of us that are still in lockdown, there's like a bit of a cognitive heavy load. And I don't know about you, but I'm not in the business of helping people survive in change. I'm in the business of helping people to thrive in change. And that's what this session is about. Exactly what you put in that word cloud. How do we understand people? How do we understand how our brains deal with change so that we can really help them, so that we can help them thrive in change? So the way that we're going to work is, I'm going to talk a little bit about, well, what is it that we can predict about the way that people react or respond to change? Because when we can predict something, we can plan for it. And then we're going to flip the lid. We're going to flip the lid open on our brain, and we're going to start looking a little bit deeper into, okay, so what is all this neuroscience of change stuff? And then we're going to share, and this is, so at the beginning, I do have to share a little bit of information, but I'm going to make it as interactive as possible. And somebody's going to keep time because I could talk about this stuff all day. How do we make change work? How do we make change work with the knowledge that we have? But before we go into that, we've been reading your comments on the LinkedIn group, and a lot of people wanted to know, what is this neuro leadership stuff? What is it and what isn't it? Like, can we just get clear on this? Can we just get on the same page? So that's what I'm just going to cover quickly. So the neuroscience of leadership it's the application of what we call relevant brain-based science to leadership behaviors. So in short, leading with the brain in mind. It comes from the areas of social cognitive neuroscience, which is the neuroscience of connection. Somebody put that in the AHA slides. And it comes from affective neuroscience, which is the neuroscience of emotion. So don't expect me to lie you on a slab and open your head and start operating on you. What I know about the brain is tiny, tiny. And actually, gosh, 90% of what we know about the brain, we've only discovered in the last 10 to 15 years through the advances in neuroimaging technology. And it's continually changing. So I've got to keep up to pace with what's being debunked and what's new, which makes it exciting. So it's very new. It was sort of created by David Rock, who's an Aussie who now lives in the US. And basically what he did is he got a bunch of social cognitive neuroscientists, a bunch of business leaders, brought them together and said, hey guys, teach us what we need to know about the brain to make us more effective leaders. And for me personally, the success that I've had with clients in helping them in change, it gives people a why. It's evidence-based, it's validated, it's science. And so when people sort of understand that this is actually what's going on between their ears, then they're more ready to adapt change and change the way they do things, which is great for us in the change space. So just quickly, what it isn't. It's not neuro-linguistic programming. They're completely separate things. They just both happen to have the word neuro in them. Now, neuro-linguistic programming, or NLP, has been around since the early 70s. Two guys got together and decided to really study people who were at the top of their game in therapy. So no, it's not evidence-based, it's not science, but my goodness, as a practice, it's highly effective in helping people in really trying to understand our language patterns. And we're going to be talking about language later as well. And we use it in coaching. It's a really good framework to help to ask the questions that make a difference. And both Andrew and I are quite passionate practitioners of NLP. And when I did Andrew's change diagnostics course, which is absolutely fabulous, we carried on after the course and we had sessions together, and he was teaching everyone NLP. So it was brilliant. And finally, look, it's not the be all and end all of leadership. It's not everything about leadership. It's leading with the brain in mind, but it's more focused on that people-centered. How can we facilitate and affect change? So I hope that sort of cleared up what it isn't. So we're ready to move on. Excellent. Okay. I mentioned to you in the beginning is that if there are things that we can predict about how people react and responding to change, then we can plan for them. So I just want to take you through, before we dig into the brain stuff, a little bit about what are these predictable dynamics of change? What can we expect to see in people's behavior? And the first thing is that really change comes at a cost. Change is, it can be neutral, it can be positive or negative, and we view it as negative if we can't predict how it's going to impact us. But even positive change will experience a bit of a loss. A new baby, what do we lose? Sleep. A new job, we might lose a little bit of confidence. Moving from the UK to Australia, we might lose our whole family and friends. Even lottery winners, Dan Gilbert, who said, I also study positive psychology, he studied lottery winners. And, you know, they also, they lose trust in their friends. They're like, oh gosh, is everybody just at me for my money? And so, and this is why the change curve that you're probably familiar with comes from the grief curve from Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. So when we're in a state of particularly unexpected change, we can't think clearly. We are confused and messages seem to be mixed. And this is often what you get in like, well, what did they mean? And everybody's reading the same message, but interpreting it in many, many different ways. And it can impact our confidence. And particularly think about people who are subject matter experts. If you're doing a systems implementation, they've been top of the tree in their particular system, and now, bam, they're back down, learning the same as everybody else. And that loss of confidence makes us feel vulnerable. So what do? When we're vulnerable, we go on the defense or the attack. We start to question motives. Why are they doing this to us? You know, we start to, maybe our brains want to close the loop on the story and create rumors. It's not necessarily malintentioned. It's just the way that our brains are working. And so when we lose that sense of trust, what do? We go into survival mode. We go into self-preservation mode. And so when we know, if we're aware of that these might be to a lesser or greater degree, depending on the change, depending on the experience of the people. Once we know this, then we can plan for it. We can embed it into our change approaches and practices. And where do all these come from? They come from here, in between our ears. So let's dig a little bit deeper into the neuroscience of change. Now, I know we're pushed for time, but I saw on that slide, on that AHA slide, that some of you are actually quite familiar with neuroscience. So whoever the wonderful person is who's managing the chat for me, and I can see the chat, but I'm not very good at multitasking because it doesn't exist, is I really would like you to start to help me with some of these areas and do a bit of guessing. But to set the scene, I know we've got the brainstem there already because we're not really going to talk about that, but it's important to know what the red bit is. Look, to our brains, change equals threat. 200,000 years ago, anything that we smelt differently, fire, saw differently, tracks, heard differently, noises, enemy tribe, saber-toothed tiger, ate differently, nasty berry. It was a matter of life or death. And much as we like to think that our brains have evolved over these 200,000 years, no, they haven't really. So we still have this change equals danger and threat going on in the background. So my first question to you to pop in the chat box is, what would we find in the blue area? What's in the blue box? Well, it's not a box. What's in the blue bit of the brain? Oh, and the other thing is, for those of you who like sources, Veronica Yan from the University of Texas, she says, if you guess wrong, it doesn't matter because you'll remember the right answer for longer. So it doesn't matter. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Doesn't matter about spelling. Oh, we've got, Atalonia, I need to check with that. I'm not 100% sure. I think it might be somewhere else. Oh, for goodness sake, you need to be taking this, not me. Fabulous. Exactly. That's exactly what is in there. Everything that they're saying pretty much. So what I'm going to be talking about circuits rather than, well, there are some pieces of the brain because, you know, one of the things that's been debunked about the brain is left brain logical, right brain emotional, right brain creative. It doesn't happen that way. Our brain is highly interconnected. And even this representation of the brain isn't real because we used to talk about the triune brain. That's been debunked. But it's a much easier way to represent what on earth is going on. So in this blue bit of our brain, which is very, very old and not as developed as we liked it to be, yes, it's the limbic system, it's the emotional center, and it houses the amygdala. And the amygdala, as you can see, is responsible for our fight, flight, freeze response. Well, this little amygdala is constantly on in the background. If we're going to use an analogy, we'd use a smoke detector. Yep, always there, just checking for signs of fire. Well, our amygdala is always in the background. We scan for danger or threat 5 times per second. We have 5 times more neurons in our brain dedicated to looking for danger than looking for pleasure. So that's what we call the negativity bias. And that's from the work of Roy Baumeister, and that was only 20 years ago. And we still have the same amount of neurons. So it's an extremely fast and mostly unconscious part of our brain. And as you were saying, yes, it also houses the hippocampus, which is a seat of memory as well. Another circuit that's sort of crossing over the blue and the green areas is what we call the seeking circuit. And there's too many bits to name in that particular circuit. But we're seeking to move away from pain, and we're seeking to move towards pleasure. But we're seeking 5 times more to move away from pain than we are for seeking pleasure. So think about this, change people. If we can help people to fix something that's broken, if we can help them to see that they're solving their own problems, that they're moving away from what's painful, moving away from what's comfortable, that gives them a little hit of dopamine, which is in the reward system of our brain, and makes them want to repeat the behavior. So that's our interesting seeking circuitry, seeking away. And actually, dopamine is what's closely related to addiction, so be careful. Okay, let's move on. What's the green part of our brain? Pop it in the chat box. What's this wonderful green bit, and particularly the dark green bit here, just behind your eyes? Yep. Ah. Amazing. Fabulous. Right. So it's what differentiates us from chimpanzees being able to sing Stairway to Heaven. It is, the frontal lobe, in particular the green bit, the prefrontal cortex. And there's a reason why I'm asking you this first, and we're going to be covering it a little bit later. But in terms of, I think it's appropriate for change to talk about in change, is that when we tell people something they already know, the brain just switches off. Yeah, I've been there, done that, got the t-shirt, not interested. So that's why it's really important. Let's find out what people already know. It's also a human-centered design principle. Let's find out what people know, and then let's add to it and layer it. So the executive circuitry, the prefrontal cortex. You know when you're doing really complex work and you just hold your forehead and you go, oh my God, my brain hurts. It actually does. So this is responsible for all the executive functions that our chimpanzee friends can't do. You know, creating a vision, planning, analysis, evaluation, weighing up pros and cons, rational thinking, staying cool under pressure. It has a braking system. Yeah, but the braking system's a little bit like a smartphone battery. Use too much of it and it will just go. Oh, I forgot to say, mention the home of habit in the seeking circuitry. Think about this. When we're in change, we're asking people to change habits. Now, are habits easy to change? Well, if habits were easy to change, gyms would be packed to the rafters. There'd be no such thing as Weight Watchers, and we wouldn't need no smoking signs. So, you know, please appreciate the depth and complexity of your roles in behavior change. I think it's really, really important, and celebrate every success that you have. And yeah, talking about 5-to-1 negativity bias, I'm doing some executive coaching at the moment, and we've been encouraged to take people through the first half hour through their strengths, and then the second half hour through their areas for development. Guess what they don't want to talk about? It's like, take me to my areas, take me to my weaknesses. Okay, so that's a whistle-stop tour of the brain, but I just want to dig a little bit deeper into the relationship between the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex. So, as I said, the amygdala is sort of constantly on in the background. And it doesn't take a woolly mammoth or a saber-toothed tiger to activate it. It could be a harsh word, a tone, an approach, a message. It could be seeing a stick and thinking it's a snake. And so when our amygdala fires, and one of you actually mentioned it in the aha slide, it literally hijacks the prefrontal cortex. This is from the work of Daniel Goleman in emotional intelligence. So there's this seesaw effect between the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex. And when our amygdala is firing, we have at most about 20% access to our PFC, which is pretty dangerous in a way when we're making very important decisions. Do not make important decisions when you're feeling very emotional. It's not good. So what we're wanting to do in change is bring people as much as possible as we can out of amygdala hijack and into that sort of safe reward area of our brain. And so what does that look like? And actually, I just want to say, when I'm working with people and teaching them strategies for dealing with change and building resilience, all of these strategies have at their core how to dampen down that amygdala and give us access to the prefrontal cortex so that we are using, this is the superhero of our brain, and we need to learn to know how to access it. So look, what does it look like? Well, our brain in safety and reward is pretty much what you would expect it to be. It's things like, being less scared to make mistakes, feeling safe to speak up. When our brain feels safe, we don't have as much sort of frenetic neural activity. So it has a broader span and scope. We are more open to ideas. We get insights. We're willing to explore. We're willing to listen to a change manager talking to us about a particular change and maybe even believe some of the benefits. So this is the state that we're really looking to help people access in their brains. And when we do help create that state for them, we're rewarded with dopamine, which dopamine is like a sticky note for memory. It's fantastic for learning. And so when we produce dopamine, it makes us want to repeat the action, which could be drinking a glass of wine or having a cigarette or doing other stuff as well. But we're talking about change management here. So this is what we're looking to achieve. And this is often maybe how people present to us. So already they've had the message from the sponsor, and depending on, and we're going to be covering that briefly as well, depending on how that is delivered, this is what we might be faced with. And it's, probably not the most productive and engaged state to be in to help people through change. So our focus narrows. Remember, we're going into self-preservation mode. We're going into survival mode. It impacts our short-term memory. So we start to be forgetful. So this is why, messaging is really important. You don't train somebody once and expect them to learn and know the system. We become change averse. We become change resistant. So, and we don't want to take risks. And so it's fine. We're going to be both. We oscillate all the time. What we don't want is for the amygdala to be always on, and we're trying to deal with people in this state most of the time. And what are they producing? They're producing stress hormones, which are great if you're going to run away from something, and then you go back and you just relax and get all your happy hormones again, but not if your amygdala is always on. If your amygdala is always on, this is what's being produced: cortisol, adrenaline, norepinephrine. And cortisol for too long in the body creates inflammation and really makes us very much not open to change. And I mentioned about messaging before, and I think this is quite important. You may or may not agree with me here, but these are examples of what I have experienced myself. How we communicate change, and particularly early on, how we communicate change can be the difference that makes the difference. And this is where, Andrew and I, this is where it's really important for us to gain access to the sponsor, to the executive leadership team, to help them understand the impact of language. So, okay, so we don't have woolly mammoths and saber-toothed tigers running around the office, or do we? What might be some sort of modern day workplace threats? Well, how about, and Type yes in the chat box if you've experienced anything similar to this. Yes, there will be some key organizational changes, but we'll share them later. Some people will be affected, but not everyone. What's going on in our brains? And this isn't too long ago, and this was from a CEO of a very large company who shall remain nameless. Talk about enemy tribes. We're on a new bus now, so you either get on and ride with us or you get off. Hey, look, I love metaphors. I love metaphors. But that's not going to get me excited about change. I don't know about you. So thinking about, with a few tweaks, maybe we could use some of those. Particularly if we give people a why and a when and a how and a bit more specificity. But what this language is doing, it's a language of exclusion. And when we feel socially excluded, it's so painful. And when we feel socially excluded, it's physically painful. So being criticized, being told, can I give you some feedback? Being left out, and we're all passionate about inclusion. It creates what we call social pain. This is the work of Naomi Eisenberger and Matthew Lieberman. And what they identified, and again, this is currently being challenged, I'll just be open with you, but so far it's okay. What they identified is that the areas that are activated when we feel social exclusion and social pain have about a 95% overlap with the areas of our brain where we experience physical pain. They actually advocate taking Tylenol if you're feeling sad. I probably wouldn't go that far myself, but think about this. The difference as well with social pain is it goes deeper into our long-term memory. It goes deeper into our hippocampus. And when we retrieve it, it's sort of exaggerated. A broken heart hurts more than a broken leg. This isn't soft and fluffy stuff. This is serious stuff. Because we can't help people change if they're feeling socially excluded. So Lieberman and Rock got together, and from this study that they did, where they played a game called Cyberball, I'll tell you about that another time. They created a framework. Can you type just yes or why in the chat box if you've heard of the SCARF framework? Yeah, so we got a lot of people who are familiar with SCARF. Excellent, okay. And maybe you're using it as well. So what Claire Edwards did was she took the SCARF model and she took the work from Matthew Lieberman, who wrote a brilliant book called Social, and she created her own, because there was one part of the SCARF model that just, it was so important to cover that we just couldn't let it be. I needed to separate them out. So what I'm wondering, this is the bit that I want to be as interactive as possible. And I'm wondering, Andrew, if you can help me with this on the chat, because I told you I can't multitask and none of us can.
Sure, happy to.
And I'm wondering how much time I've got. Oh, lovely, perfect, okay. Well, we're going to do another Whistlestop tour. So I'm going to take you through the first one. So basically what this is that we have, there are 6 core social needs that drive our behavior, and particularly in change. When these needs are not being met, this is when we go into threat. Oh, that rhymes, I didn't realize that. And so if we can really take note of each of these and embed them into our change practices and approaches, how do we cater to those needs? Then we are on a success run. And I'm probably not going to be able to make it as interactive as I want to, but hey, look, let's have a go. So the first, the S, is safety. And, it used to be that I just focus on psychological safety, but now with the pandemic, we focus on physical safety as well. But it's, I can bring my whole self to work. I have a voice, and I'll do this one for you, and then we'll go through the others and have your input. Google, with their Project Aristotle, if you're interested in this, they identified that the key driver for high-performing teams was psychological safety. So, and you'll start to see it take greater and greater importance. So let me give you just a couple of simple, really, really simple examples of creating psychological safety. It might be that you go out to your stakeholders and ask for questions, but to specifically say, you can ask any question you want. There is no such thing as a silly question, absolutely no such thing. It just helps people to feel safer, to contribute and to participate. And also thinking about how we deal with mistakes when we're doing training, systems training, we're getting frustrated because they don't get it. But then we just help them. You say, it's okay, that's absolutely fine. We're going to learn from this. Okay, so the next one is objectivity. It's fairness, you know, the perception of fairness, of being treated with equity. And when I had to make 70 out of 120 people redundant in a call center, this was the one that myself and the executive leadership team spent days and days and days on. We had, what did we call it? Fairness, I can't remember. Anyway, really, really taking time to think about fairness. So what's something that we could do, or what's something that you already do that helps to create an environment of fairness or equity? What's a way that you could communicate, or something you could do? Oh, yes, brilliant. Thank you. Fantastic. Transparency. Transparency is really, really important. When I work with a lot of people in change, they say, look, I'd rather hear it as it is, but then delivered diplomatically. I'd rather hear it as it is than sugarcoating, you know what I mean? And so I think that the more transparent we can be, we can't always treat people equally, but we can treat them equitably. So that's really important. I'm going to have to race on with this, unfortunately. I got too excited in the beginning. Certainty. Our brains crave certainty, absolutely crave certainty. And this is everything that is hard to give people in change. And one of the ways that, and I did this with Andrew in the course, and one of the things that I do with my clients all the time that really helps to dampen down that amygdala reaction and give them access to their prefrontal cortex, talk about what's not changing, help them understand the context and perspective of change. And you can see them going, okay, it's not everything that's changing. Okay, a sense of importance, validation, status, recognition. Remember the subject matter expert who's gone right back down to the beginning. What can we do in our approach and our programs to recognize people and give them that sense of importance that they matter? Autonomy. There's that old saying, people don't resist change, they resist being changed. To give people a sense of choice and autonomy. Okay, there will absolutely be immovables, but what is something that we can give people choice in, to make decisions, to have options? It's so important for them to be able to access that sense of autonomy. And each and every one of us has a unique hierarchy of these particular changes, of these needs. And it's a point in time. And the last one, yes, it's the fluffy one, but it's not fluffy. It's the love, it's connection, it's love, it's connection. So how can we, and particularly at the moment, you know, when people are stressed from working at home, they're missing their tribe, is how can we facilitate connecting people? How can we create teams? One of the things that Andrew did with us is, and this relates to autonomy as well, is you name the project. And we had so much fun naming the project. I don't know why we ended up calling it Torpedo. It probably wasn't the best name, but there you go. So Andrew, how much time have I got? Not too long. Okay.
You're still going good. You're still going good. I think we've got another about a 5 to 7, but keep going.
5 to 7, brilliant. Okay, I saw a couple of questions in the chat there, so maybe if we've got time, can we do those at the end? This is a Whistlestop tour. Obviously, in our programs, we go into way much more detail with this. We look at where are we currently creating threat situations, where can we create reward situations. And we, in the leading teams through change, we really map this out and start to embed it. So a quick plug. So at BrainSmart, we have a program called Dealing with Change and Building Resilience. It's completely virtual. That's what I was working on last year. So it's 6 online modules, lots of quizzes, interaction, lots of brain knowledge, understanding stress, understanding change. And then we have 3 live interactive webinars. I think at some point, oh, there you go. Andrew's already put it in the chat, where you can find out more about it. And I do have to put a shout out to Sharon Connolly. She's amazing. There's a video that I have adapted from that I purchased a video from Sharon. She gave me the PowerPoint so I could make my own video. This slide here is adapted from Sharon. She is an absolute star. Yes, we love Sharon. She has to have a shout out. So that is in a nutshell. And what I wanted to do was to bring it all together. And I've got a little, our brains love acronyms. So I've brought it together in an acronym. Now, look, I'm not going to go through all of this because a lot of the stuff we've already gone through, but there's a couple of things I want to point out. And as I go through these, the first person who can guess what the actual words are, there's 2 words, I will give an e-copy of my book, which is all about storytelling. So pay attention. Use curiosity. Okay, look, it's not rocket science, but it is rocket and science. So safety first, we've already covered that. Okay, we're going to be covering personalizing in a little slide I've got later on. Please always give people a why. Even, you know, it was actually Sharon who put the question in there and said, yeah, but what if it's business as usual? And we just say, look, you need a verification code next week. Why do they need a verification code next week? We often, when we're busy, we forget to share the why, and our brains are meaning-making machines. So always give a why. Create curiosity. Curiosity releases dopamine, which helps us to remember. So quizzes, teasers, that wonderful safe anticipation is a great state to create for people. Engage with story, you know, with more time, I'd have shared more stories. Andrew is fabulous at storytelling. When we wrap something up in a story, okay, so we've got Broca's and Wernicke's, which is where we process language and data and information. Where in the brain do we process story? Everywhere. We've got a neural party going on. So it's really, whether you want to make a change stick, use story. Change it up, change your message up. There is, you know, we need repetition, but we can't repeat the same message in the same way. Let's look at the consequences of that. For those of you who are not in Australia, currently, I'm in the state of New South Wales and I'm in lockdown, along with probably half of the rest of Australia. Our premier comes to at 11 o'clock every day and shares a message. Well, what happened when she kept sharing the same message? This is what happened. People created memes as to how often she would say something. So we've got a Gladys Berejiklian workout. Now, when it's a matter of life or death, it's probably not as funny. What was the other thing that they did? They focused on data and information. As of 8 p.m. last night, blah, 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 blah. We're talking about how many people tested positive. Tested positive. What does that really mean? Now, my message here isn't about COVID. My message is about changing up your message to get it across. Testing positive means nothing to us. It doesn't, we can't see ourselves in the situation. They learned that lesson. So what did they do? They changed it up. They brought a lung specialist in. They actually filmed people with COVID. They interviewed paramedics and nurse managers. And what happened to the level of vaccination? Bam, it rocketed. Now, it's not whether I'm for or against vaccination. It's hopefully illustrating the message that we need to change it up. Quickly, has anyone guessed the acronym? Who guessed the first?
We're Charlie. Congratulations.
Charlie,
you got
fantastic.
The full thing.
I'll get your email address and I'll send you my book. HCD, I'm preaching to the converted, putting people first. You know, align our messages with the company's purpose, the values. We know about social. We know that we want to gather opinion. We're good at doing it in the beginning, maybe not so good about doing it throughout. And finally, having empathy. You know, we're so busy. I saw how so busy change managers are. When we just take a moment to step back, think about a time when we really struggled through change and find a way to empathize. There's a lovely old saying about, it's actually a poem, you know, that to really understand someone, you need to walk 2 miles in their moccasins. And there was a lovely addendum that I heard not so long ago, and it says, and remember to take your own shoes off first. So when we create space for change, when we help people see that their change response that from their amazing brains is perfectly normal, when we factor in the knowledge of these social needs that drive their behavior, when we factor them into our change approach and our communication, and we're using human-centered design, human-centered language, we're no longer in the business of surviving. We're in the business of helping people to thrive in change.
Love it. And we've got a very empathetic member, Charlie. He's actually confessed that he didn't guess the first word. So it looks like we've got Rebecca. Well done, Rebecca. And thank you for that, Charlie. But very quick one, Claire. Charlie did have a good question. It was around when our amygdala is triggered. Does that link to sort of think fast, think slow, and the work of, I can't remember the author's name.
Daniel Kahneman. Absolutely. Love my unconscious bias programs, Charlie. So basically, it's not so much the amygdala. So system 1 and system 2, well, they're a metaphor, actually. They're not so much, so the amygdala is reactive, but system 1 and system 2 is like, what's 2 times 2? 4. What's 4 times 4? 16. What's 16 times 16? I have to engage system 2. So there's not a direct correlation to the part of the brain, but it's a fabulous metaphor for helping people understand about making assumptions and jumping to conclusions and unconscious bias. Maybe we could do an unconscious bias program next year.
Love it. Let's do it. All right. There were a lot of questions around practical things to do, but I think you covered it quite nicely in the Space for Change. By the way, that Space for Change poster, can we share that in our LinkedIn group so everyone can access that? I think it's really cool.
Everybody is going to get a copy of the Space for Change poster.
Awesome. And then Anthony had a question around the pituitary gland. How does the pituitary gland, as a I guess a stage member in the brain, how does that come into change and what we do?
I don't know.
I said the same to Anthony. I was like, I'm Googling this.
I haven't really studied the pituitary gland. I don't know if it's connected to the adrenals, and the adrenals are the ones that obviously that produce adrenaline. But I'm going to study that. Thank you.
It is the major gland that then pushes out all the hormones to every other gland. So your hippo, your amygdala, it's the gland of your brain. And without it, you've got a problem.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Who was that?
That was Anthony.
Anthony, thank you so much.
Amazing, guys. Amazing, amazing, amazing. So with that said, Claire, thank you so much. That was a real whirlwind tour. Can everyone see the thank you slide? So how's that for inclusion? I hope we've got as many as possible in there. Thank you so much. That was really great. Love having you on board and love partnering and working with you. We've obviously shared your link if people want to look at more detailed content and stuff like that. And I've been doing Claire's course in between all the sort of stuff we're doing at Tavaz, and it's incredible. It's really making a lot of the stuff we do with HCD come alive for us. So thank you so much. And with that said, Christina mentioned in the beginning, it is competition time. So once a quarter, we make available what are all our courses that we do in-house for clients. We make it available for the public so that everyone who wants to upgrade their skills with human-centered design, collaborative tech, and really truly engage people and do change with people instead of to people. So this week was World Distance Learning Day. I think it was on Tuesday. And we've met an incredible recruitment partner called Talenza. And what we love about them is every person we trained or coached that was looking for a job, we sent them to many recruiters, and we consistently got really good feedback from Talenza about them being human-centric, understanding clients' needs, understanding future of work. And they're also understanding the change in skills as well when it comes to leading change in the space. Their clients are asking for things like creative communication, like human-centered design, using digital engagement. So what they've done is they've actually sponsored a seat on our October program. So if you would like to enter that, scan that code there. I'll also pop a little bit of a link. let me just find the link here for you guys. So I will pop that in the chat. So if you wanted to enter that competition, there's a little landing page there. There's the link. I've just put that in. It's all virtual. So this one is the accelerator course. It's all virtual because in New South Wales, we're going to do it. So I know Christina will run another one for the US as well. But hey, if you want to join from the US and do some creative times, you're welcome to do it. So this is part of our give back. So we've got a special seat warmed up. Our course is almost full. So get in there. There is a seat reserved for this. And if you are interested in exploring a little bit more about what that course is about and what we do, we've got some obviously coming up in October in Australia time zone. So, you know, a lot of people from either India join, all the different sort of time zones there. And then Christina in November will be running a virtual accelerator course in US time zone. So that's often where the UK people join and all of that. So we cover both corners of the world, but have a look at our website. I will pop a link in there as well. Or Hugh, can you pop a link to our website? So have a little squiz, have a little work there.
Yeah, you're right, mate.
And thank you. And lastly, we love feedback. This is our sixth one. We don't make up these topics. These are the topics you tell us are relevant, the topics you want. So please, Hugo will put a link there to our feedback form. Give us feedback. Let us know what works. Let us know how we can make it better for you. But most importantly, let us know what topics you're interested in and what future topics you'd like, because we do run these monthly as much as we can. And if you haven't joined already, please join our LinkedIn community, because that's where we vote for topics. That's where we collaborate, we share. Talenza is also going to do, I think, a Talent Tuesday where they're going to give us a brief of what's happening in the market and leadership. But, you know, I'm pretty active in there, particularly on Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays. And I see a lot of people are starting to also put their content in as well. So a really cool group. We're about 300 members strong, and that's the best way to not miss out on the next space for change. I think we're looking at a topic on artificial intelligence, robotics, and automation for the next one in change and what it means in the coaching space. That's what a lot of people, but let us know your thoughts as well, and we'll put it up as a poll and a vote. Does that sound awesome? So guys, with all my love, thank you so much for today. Claire, you were bloody, how amazing is Claire? Can we have a round of applause? Let's all come off mute and give Claire a well-deserving warm boost of oxytocin and serotonin. Well done. And I'm looking at all these comments. They're like, oh my God, Claire rocks. She's amazing. She's one of my favorite presenters, but anything about the details of the brain, I'll go straight to Claire. Looking forward to working more and more with you, Claire. You've been an incredible partner and just an incredible human. And thanks for being my change soulmate alongside with Christina. All right, guys. So with that said, have an amazing day. Have an interstellar